Hello, and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy Podcast, read along, live stream channel. We are reading the Phaedo, and we are enjoying many great insights along the way. So where are we in the text? Well, good question. We have outlined some dramatic stakes. Wow. For the text, last time we were asking the question, what would be the ideal or ultimate or archetypal hero's journey and a heroic adventure? What would be the last action hero or the greatest action hero? And so we are hypothesizing that this might be what we're reading here. That Socrates in rushing to save, well, not rushing, of course, in saving the Logos, if he is able to save the Logos, purify people from their distrust of the Logos, of themselves, and of reality. But not just that, we had extra stakes. Add to that the do what is needed to counteract the people who claim to be philosophers or knowers who teach the opposite to the Logos, not only a distrust, but the actual opposite, that there is no reality, or it's not understandable. Or, looking at the text over here, that there is no excellence of mind, virtue of character, and there are no rules of an art. Art is anything. There is no art, or not only that there is no art, but there are no rules to an art. There are no paradigms or principles. These kind of things that we hear a lot about, and especially those in power, who have a prominent voice or have some authority, often teach this, that there is no ultimate reality. You can't know the nature of the divine. You can't know the meaning of life. Therefore, listen to them. They are the knowers. Because even though there's no knowing, there is one thing you can know, and it's whatever they know. Or it's their knowing that there is no knowing. There is no excellence of mind, no soundness or stability of character. That they alone are the most wise, and they have thoroughly understood that there is no soundness or stability among the realities or the Logos, and there are no rules to an art. So this is what we hear a lot of. And of course, we see the significance of that being, this is a way of silencing people, getting people to give up the philosophical quest and ask questions of the way things are. Because people who are in positions of authority have gotten there usually because they benefit by the way that things are. So, of course, this is stagnation. This is an evolution. This doesn't allow for our purpose as human beings to purify our ignorance and to perfect our understanding. It doesn't allow for learning or growth. So it creates a stagnation, not only a stagnation, but a active diminishing, a journey towards our inevitable destruction. So these are the stakes that Socrates has been laying out. And this is what Plato is laying out for us in the text. What is the ultimate stakes? Now, last time we talked about how this wasn't a particular saving of a particular character. We're not saving the local dance hall, or we're not saving the lake or the water supply from being polluted by some capitalist. We are saving the thing that is needed to solve all problems, from the particulars to the one. What is needed to save all pollution? What is needed to save all tyranny? Not only what is needed to save us from our ignorance or our problems, but what is needed to reach our highest destiny? What is needed for us to evolve collectively as a species and individually as souls on a quest, a learning quest. We come from somewhere and we're going somewhere after we finish here. That's one of the questions in the text. What's our reincarnation going to be like? And of course, Socrates is pointing out, well, it kind of depends on how you nurture the soul. What do you want to nail your soul to? Do you want to nail your soul to the body by chasing physical sensations and pleasures and pains? Or do you want to purify your soul to be more like the divine? So Socrates is laying out the doctrine of philosophy and the meaning of life, the meaning of all human people, the purpose of all physical things, of course, even sticks. Seek the ideal in being, and also remind us to pursue that question when we see two sticks equal to each other. We need to start there. Hopefully we're not chasing our pleasures and pains, and we have an interest in learning, so we can ask the question, what is equality itself? Likewise, two beautiful things, what is beauty itself? This turns us to a lover of learning, which can transform into a lover of wisdom when we realize we're asking questions about being. And of course, when we realize that the wisdom that we seek can be not only understood, so that's a level above opinions and belief, which is what the people who claim to be philosophers often deal in. Not only can we understand it, but we can verify it in our knowledge, nous, in our experience. And if we have both of those together and we've been applying it, not just defining it, but demonstrating it, applying it in something that Socrates is calling the virtues, then we can integrate this understanding and direct experience into our character and get something called phronesis, the virtue that we trade all the other virtues in for. A kind of learning that we can take with us into our next incarnations. So, of course, Socrates asked, well, do you want to come back as a donkey? Or a hawk? Or a wolf? Or a bee? Or do you want to come back as, well, do you want to not come back, but move on to the next level and follow Socrates to where he is going? Of course, where he says he is going to have good conversations with better men who have completed their journey here and better masters and gods in this higher evolution, in this next dimension. Of course, there are objections to that. Or maybe the body outlasts the soul, and after we die, that's it for our soul. Or maybe the soul is actually more powerful than the body, except you don't outlive your last coat. The clothes that you die in, you might outlive many clothes, but not the last one. Just like our physical body, this might be the last version of your body. So while your soul outlives many versions of your physical body, when you die, that's it. Or maybe if there is reincarnations, maybe this is the last reincarnation. So these are the three objections. Or two, if you realize that you don't outlive your last jacket, argument applies to this body or reincarnations. You can say, well, it's just two. So he's being double teamed. So we have to address the logos of Simmias and Cebes, because these are kind of arguments against our reality, against immortality of the soul, against reincarnation, but more specifically the immortality of the soul. And it ties in with reality, because for there to be an immortal, knowable realm of being, then it has to be knowable to us. So just as there is a hyparxis of all of the ideas, justice itself, beauty itself, so too there is a hyparxis of our soul that can unify with it. And if we can't unify with the immortal and the eternal by ourselves being like it, being eternal and immortal ourselves, then there is no realm of being that is knowable. There is no reality. We don't have what we need to reach our destiny. And if there are no rules to the art of getting there, there is no method of reaching there, and there is no method for identifying and removing our problems. Saving all of the student rec centers in all of the movies where some evil capitalist is shutting down the community center, or saving all polluted rivers because some evil tyrant is polluting the river for his personal gain, and so on. All of the so we're looking at all of the movies and realize, oh, there's kind of a theme in all of them, not just in all movies, kind of in all literature and video games too. For there to be a stakes and a drama and something engaging, there has to be something that is solved or something that is perfected. And the logos that Socrates has been outlining for us, not outlining, giving us the information, giving us the material to apply ourselves to figure out, that logos is the rules or the paradigm for doing both of those things. So if there was an ultimate hero saving the ultimate thing worth saving, it would be the logos. And of course, we see the implications of that not being saved, of having a world where we're not taught this. So lots of terrible, terrible religions with terrible, terrible beliefs that are brainwashed into people exist because of the idea, well, we can't know the divine. So just anything is okay, which is absurd. Even if we couldn't know the divine, simply saying, well, you can make up nonsense shouldn't be allowed. Of course, because why? Because people can be manipulated to act against their own interests. It might be good for the billionaire preacher to convince people of whatever he wants about the nature of the divine, but it won't be good for his poor followers. And so on and so on. All tyrants, this falls into the same category, of course. So we want to overcome these problems, identify it has a cause, of course. We talk about evolution and needing to stay loyal to the safety of the cave in your tribe because we didn't have the logos and the outside of the cave was scary, filled with saber-toothed tigers and so forth. But that is a solution that no longer applies. We can't fear our fellow men. We can't fear stepping out of our old traditions. We can't be blindly loyal to the ignorance of the past. No longer has that survival benefit. In fact, it has the opposite. It will create the conditions for the destruction of mankind and our planet if we don't overcome them. So how do we overcome the archetypal problem, of which all movies and games and literature will have a particular reflection of? The logos. And if we don't, well, we have what Socrates is pointing out, that there is no understandable reality. You can't trust humans and you can't trust the logos unless you have and apply the art of the logos to judging people. Humans are not ideal completely or sick completely. They're in the middle somewhere. Very rare to get an exceptionally tall or short person, or beautiful or ugly person, or black or white person, or what else did he say? Dogs, big or small dogs. We're all somewhere in between those extremes. In fact, we've already pointed out in this text that there's a kind of logos to our physical world, reflection of the logos that's a back and forth between opposites. So even though we might be here as a philosopher, closer to Socrates, closer to the divine, closer to the demiurgos or the daemon, and therefore closer to the ideal, there'll be days when we are more towards this side, or thoughts that come in and knock us back and forth. Socrates pointed this out. He said, we might have time for philosophy, but the illusions and foolishness and pleasures and pains and distractions of the body will come flooding in and knock us off our quest. So even if we do philosophy, if we do watch these podcasts and read along and apply ourselves, there'll be times when the pleasures and pains knock you down. So we kind of move back and forth, giving us the need for the virtue of courage to hold on to the logos at all times, even though going through those ups and downs, pleasures and pains, fears, and desires. So that's part of the art, realizing that which of course gives us the questions: where are you at in terms of your ideal, and where are you stuck in terms of your problem? Purification and perfection. Where are you at? Where are you stuck? So this was a hypothesis that we've picked up along the way. These are the sorts of questions that Socrates begins his dialectic with. Where are you at? Or where were you stuck in the argument? So we can direct the use of our art through the dialectic, following the logos to the reality. All of those we trust, but we're not blindly trusting them. Socrates pointed out last time that you can't just blindly trust something. You have to have the art of the logos. Same thing with people. The art of the logos you apply to people so that you can determine whether they're trustworthy. Even if you're told they should be your best friends, or they should be your, especially when we're told that they're our nearest and dearest friends, and therefore we should trust them, they might not be trustworthy. They might not be being truthful in this particular instance with this particular subject. So we need to, and if we don't judge them, so there's a judgment of character of people based on where they're at and where they're stuck, is necessary. Otherwise, we'll be let down. And that's a blow. And after many, this is the text, after many blows, he hates everyone and is led to believe there is no perfect wholesomeness or sanity. There is no ideal state of mind in people. It does not exist in anybody. So, the path to villainy, of course. There is no goodness in humans, therefore end the human race or whatever. And of course, we see people in power today with that kind of attitude. Bring on Armageddon, because people stink. It's okay to enslave this population because there is no goodness in people. I've been let down, especially by those who I was led to believe are my nearest and dearest friends or family. Kill that race, do a genocide, and so on and so on. A hatred towards people. Socrates is saying, by the way, similar things happen to the logos. If you trust any logos, just like the logos of Simmias and Cebes, telling us that our soul might not be immortal, then you might develop a hatred for the logos. Especially if I was convincing previously. Socrates' argument was convincing that we necessarily, and there were many arguments that we went through, that our soul must be eternal and immortal. Therefore, so should be the logos and being, and therefore the rules or the paradigm allowing us to reach being, applied to our destiny, the path that we can walk, applied to our problems, what we need to purify ourselves and escape from fate. This is very convincing. But this, the soul is kind of like harmony. It's the first thing to go in a lyre. Or you don't outlive your last clothes. These are they sound kind of true. Don't just believe them because it feels familiar or it sounds familiar. You have to apply the art of the logos. See what's worth trusting, just as you do with humans. Otherwise, you'll develop a hatred for the logos. So those are the stakes. Can we save the logos from our fear or distrust or hatred of the logos? Not only that, from those who, with the absence of having an understanding of the rules of art of the logos, they come in and they claim to be philosophers. They spend their time contradicting their logos. Look how smart they are. And of course, 90% of the internet is that. People with channels or with a voice, with a debate channel, whatever, and they don't claim to have knowledge per se. They spend their whole time shooting down anybody else who does. It's very easy to criticize. It's much more tricky to apply yourself to develop true understanding and knowledge, especially if your whole belief is based on the fact there is none. So what makes you wise? Hitting everybody down. No, no, no. Screw you. You're bad. You did this in the past. You did that in the past. You're cancelled. You're wrong. That's bad. We can ignore that because of this. So critic, well, the negative kind of critic. Of course, a true critic applies an art and would be able to judge according to that. That's the ion, but we're not going to go into that now. But people who believe they have become most wise because they spend their time contradicting the logos. And have an air of confidence about it. This is mainly what I see. I don't see a lot of people spending their time promoting the logos, talking about the logos, creating the conditions for others to learn the logos. I mainly see people who contradict. Oh, you can't know. Oh, you can't change that. There is no truth. There is no understanding. We should allow all crazy beliefs that are harmful or religions that are harmful because there is no knowable reality. Art is the same thing. There is no actual art. It's just whatever you want it to be. Art is just based on your interpretation. Of course, in reading, we're saying, well, actually, we want to purify ourselves from that which causes interpretation. Why? Interpretation means to add things that isn't there in the art, in the text, or to leave out things that are. So we spend time, when we get stuck on a word, we look it up in the Greek to understand it for ourselves. We don't want to read this text and say, well, to me, it means Jesus. Hang on a second. No. This was written before the idea of Jesus. No, but to me, Socrates is saying that Jesus and Pokemon are actually... No, you're adding to the text. That's not there. You're not going to connect with the message, the meaning. You're not going to learn. And if, in order to see things as they are without interpretations, require us to match the level of vision and understanding where they're at, the level of mind of the author, and we are becoming like Socrates. And of course, Socrates is someone who has been initiated, lived the right life, purified himself, and therefore does have trust in where he's going. That he's going to die well. He's going to a place he's looking forward to. And apparently, if correct use of philosophy is the art and practice of death and dying, this wouldn't be his first time he's gotten there. Which is curious. So when he says he has good trust or belief in where he's going, he's just saying here where we are in the text that he must therefore be using an art to say that it's worth trusting this thing. So earlier it was kind of puzzling. Well, hang on a second. If philosophy is the art and practice of death and dying, which requires experiencing it, and the method, so that's nous, and the method to get to that experience is dianoia or understanding, then why is he talking about having trust in something if he must have developed understanding and knowledge? It's been a puzzle. Well, here he's saying, well, by the way, you don't just trust something. You have to apply the art. So we say it's not, so we can see it's not blind faith, because he is pointing out here in the text the rules of the art. If we don't apply rules of the art, we have these disastrous problems that follow. You'll end up distrusting all people, hating humanity, hating the logos, and being conned by those who spend their time contradicting the logos and end up believing they are the most wise and they are the ones who have thoroughly understood. And that what they've understood is there is no soundness or stability among the realities or any logos, and then there are no rules of art. So these are the states. You lose your own ability to reach that which is the most profound, and you'll be conned by those who teach the exact opposite. These are the two big bads. These are the two boss fights. These are the two dangers: doubt and distrust, and convinced against your own interests. We've talked about what is the nature of con artists, what are the natures of scammers, what are the natures of conservatives or fascists. Well, to convince people to believe in something that's actively opposite to their best interests. You don't bring yourself out of poverty by voting for tax cuts to the billionaires. It doesn't work that way. That's creating more wealth inequality, and wealth inequality is poverty. So, convinced by those who spent their time. By the way, the conservatives, do they offer any policies on how to make things better? No. They're interested in what? Contradicting things, contradicting progressives. Someone offers, hey, we could help by doing this. No, you can't do that. Why? Oh, because that's a slippery slope into, I don't know, men marrying dogs. Oh, but that's socialism. That's bad. They don't actually do anything. They just get angry and they promote fear and anger to distract us from the logos. They spent their time contradicting the logos. They don't create. They don't do anything. They're not Socrates. They're the opposite. So this is the big boss. And the other boss is distrusting the logos yourself. Maybe there isn't an understanding. Maybe the logos shouldn't be trusted. No. That's what happens if you trust everything without learning the art of the logos and applying it. This is where Socrates is coming in. This is his, seems to be his thesis. He's identified the problem, distrust of the logos. He's created an analogy to understand it. It's like distrusting humans. If you trust everyone and they let you down, that's a blow after blow after blow that gets you to think, well, maybe humans are no good. So identified the problem, the distrust in the logos. He identified a metaphor to talk about it, distrust in people. He's offered a reasoning. That's because you don't realize that extremes are rare. Everyone is somewhere in between, in the middle, between wisdom and ignorance. And you don't realize, and what's the cause of that problem? You're not applying the art of the logos. What are the consequences of that problem? Those who spend their time just contradicting the logos will sound appealing. We will lack what we need to show that they're wrong. And they will teach the world that there is no soundness or stability in the logos. You can't understand things. And reality, you can't know the divine. There is no meaning of life. You can't understand problems. Just kind of shut up and let us enact our personal beliefs. And this is the world we're in. And of course, this is our lives as well. If there were rules of the art, just like rules to a game, you would learn them and follow them to have success, win the game. If you were told there are none, you might wander around like you were drunk, as Socrates mentioned earlier. So he's identified the cause and the stakes, and he's and therefore creating the conditions for not a particular hero that solves a problem, but what would be the archetype? What would be the hero that solves all problems? So the ultimate action hero. And this would also mean that if there was a rules to an art that we would have to follow to help ourselves not fall into this villain's journey, hating all humans and hating the logos and becoming like one of these people who spend their time contradicting the logos and acting against the best interests of people, becoming a villain ourselves, then we are walking. Last week we said if the rules themselves are the dialectic, then we are walking and talking the dialectic. And that's walking the true hero's path. And if the dialectic involves having information about the self-logos, well, we're reading the Phaedo. If it involves not just defining these ideas, but defining them within a structure of the dialectic, that's what we've been doing. We've been doing it together all the way through. Here's one here. These are our 4 categories. Hopefully you've been doing your own too. If walking the walk and talking the talk is not just defining but demonstrating, then you are both defining and demonstrating. Well, those are the first 2 categories of the dialectic. You are walking and talking dialectic. Therefore, you would be becoming most like the rules of the logos that define the realities. So by being a walking and talking dialectic yourself, not only are you walking the true hero's path,
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
You're a wizard, Harry.
but you're being like the realities. What Socrates is saying is their way in. It's through likeness that we make the jump to the higher dimensions of reality. So if you've been doing that, good for you. And of course, good for everyone. So that's where we're at. So those are the stakes. And let's see how, now that we have the stakes and we've seen the significance of the text for ourselves, for reality, for slaying our fears and doubts, and slaying the big bosses that prey on those fears and doubts, and of course those old evolutionary strategies, in-group, out-group, in-cave, safe, good, difference is bad. Of course, we don't want that because we want to be different, because we want to purify and perfect ourselves. We're here to learn. That's what learning is. Of course, the more prejudiced a person is, you see them more adverse they are to learning. Ignorance and prejudice go hand in hand. So we don't want to go down that journey and become a villain ourselves, like these people. We want to save the logos, or have the logos saved for us, or go along with it. Because Socrates is saying, I am not Hercules. I'm not the great hero who's going to save it. I'm Iolaus. Iolaus. I'm the partner. You do it. I'm helping you do it. I'm your assistant. And of course, he then goes on to say it doesn't make any discernible difference because we are both servants to the logos. Because the logos comes from self. Or we doubt the logos, get conned by those con artists who tell us that there is no logos, there is no reality, there are no paradigms or rules to art. Art is anything. Governing is anything. Starting a religion is anything. There are no rules for what actually helps. Anyone can be a surgeon. Just buy a white coat and you're a surgeon. Right? Search some Facebook articles and you're a scientist. There are no actual rules. So those are the how we are conned. And therefore, conned to act against our own benefit. And so we see the implications in humanity, and then the stagnant repetition of problems in war, genocide, exploitation, fascism, capitalism, and so on. We see that. Nothing seems to be changing. Why? Because we're not reflecting with the logos to discover the patterns, the rules, the paradigm. And realizing that that paradigm has an eternal existence in the realities that makes it knowable and understandable to all people, not just the chosen people who happen to be in your cave where you were born. So, the great story, the human story. Saving humanity here. Text is saving humanity. And of course, as above, so below. The below would be humanity, the above is our individual soul. Have you been convinced there is no meaning of life? There is no destiny? That you can't know the divine? you can't experience it directly. You can't understand it with the logos. You have to just have faith, or just believe, or just have hope. Trust without the logos. Have you been convinced there are no rules or paradigm? So under the word rules of art, there is this word that I want to look up. So we've been talking also about the difference between interpretation, anything is anything, which is what the villains of the story try and convince us, so we do not challenge them. Or there are rules. So we want to see what is the Greek word here that's translated as rules. Because to read without interpretation is our goal. So we don't want to. We want to see it as accurately as we can in the text. That's part of the game. Technos. The word is technos. Which I think comes from techne. Yes, here we go. Technique. Art, craftsmanship, style. Right, techne. So the word here is a techne. Now, techne means skill. Some translations say art, but yeah. So the A means without, and techne is skill. So it's often skill or craft, which implies there to be a skill involved in its usage. So he's combining reality, logos, and skill here. Like if you have the skill of a surgeon, it implies that there be something to distinguish this skill or techne from the others. So that's why he's saying rules of art. So we could say paradigm or model or set of, terms and structure and so forth. So rules of art is nice. Let's keep reading. That sounds means the recap and intro is over and we're going to read. Let's start from here. The logos on the one hand, says Socrates, are not like human beings in this way. Since now I was merely following your lead. But that sick condition, maybe pathologos, happens when anyone puts their trust in some logos as being true without the art of the logos.
Come on, man.
This is the danger. Without the art of the logos to determine whether or not it's true. So, you trust something to be true without the art of the logos. That would imply that the art of the logos is something that leads you to being able to accurately judge truth. That's great. We're learning something that we can use to judge truth. Isn't that wonderful? This is why philosophy is so freaking awesome. I spent my life around people who didn't believe in truth, or they didn't, like, they would claim to know things that were true, but then you'd ask them, how do you know that? And they would say, I just know it, or I just learned it, or from the school of hard knocks, the school of life taught me what was true. But they couldn't actually determine what were the conditions or the paradigm or the rules or the art to make something true. And here's Socrates saying, yeah, we need it. You can't just say anything is anything. That's nonsense. But there is a way to say whether or not something is true and to trust in what is true. The art of the logos. We saw that we did a dialectic last time on how we should approach the logos. The logos was our definition. Our demonstration, we want to share in it, how it functions with us, to be that which we can share in. That which we can share in. Here's my pen. We divided it up. So it was interesting because we were just collecting terms from what we were doing, but then we could reflect on what we did and realize, oh, shocking. We were doing the dialectic the whole time. We just didn't know it. So if there are rules, we could say one way of defining philosophy is just realizing there are rules to the game and seeing them. We're doing it anyway. So definition, demonstration, and then we collected the terms and we realized, hang on a second, a collection of key terms that are all ways in which we share in the logos that follow from definition. Remember, it's the following, it's the flowing. The definition allows you to define. You define self to self, and then what you define then becomes the next term that functions to others. Then this becomes the next term that functions to others. And then this becomes the next term that relates back to self, and it all becomes together in a beautiful, complete circle. But it's not a stagnant circle. There's learning. When you return back, you've benefited, you've learned something, you've maybe even developed the art of the logos more. So when you go home with something. There's a meaning, a purpose to this return. Meaning it's not just a spiraling back, it's also a spiraling up. Spiraling up. And of course, two terms, S and O, we could say it's a spiraling up double helix. Two terms bouncing off each other. So we can say, therefore, that might explain the saying that we have, philosophy is a two-person game. Find someone to share this game with. And that's what this channel is about. Bounce your ideas, your insights off each other. Do midwifery with each other. Practice being a dialectician with each other. So that's division. We have to find the most encompassing one. That was trust. Therefore, the last step 4, is to pick out one of these terms that's more inclusive or has a higher scope or is more primary, more significant. Trust the logos. What's the logos? Something we trust in that will allow us to share in. Watch it from self. Call it in when we need it. Pursue it in our lives. Receive it when it communicates its providence to us. We have to trust it. And then, surprisingly, in an unexpected way, just like what was written in the text, Socrates said, by the way, you can't just trust the logos without the use of the art. This is our synthesis here. Therefore, trust, synthesis, analysis. 1, 2, 3, the literal 3 words we have. So it's really, really succinct. That's pretty cool. You don't just trust the logos. You have to use the art of the logos in that trust. That's the stakes. So we were doing it, and now in an amazing way, Socrates was able to anticipate us doing this and go, okay, you're probably going to be at this level. Now, this is what happens if you don't use the art in that trust. You can be just like if you don't use the art in discerning the character. Same art, I would guess. Actually, I have to guess. Without use of art, if you put excessive trust in someone without use of the art, without use of art, so we didn't define the art, but art was there. So whatever this art is, you also apply it to people, not just logos. Of course, that makes sense because people act out their logos. They talk with their logos. They have their beliefs based on the logos, which is why anything is anything. There are no rules to art. The art of governance, the art of ruling, the art of medicine, whatever, is absurd. We can't just allow everyone to have these sorts of ignorances because You can't allow people to do surgery if they're not qualified. Same with religion. You can't allow people to claim to be speaking from God when they're not. You can't allow people to be ruling countries, starting wars when they don't have an understanding of the truth. It's simple. But if we have the art, we can recognize that. We won't believe the con artists that say there's no reality, there is no logos, and there are no rules. Of course, one of the appealing ways they introduce it is to say, oh, by the way, wouldn't you like to be wise? Oh yeah, everyone wants to be wise. That's why we're all philosophers. We all have a compulsion towards the truth. Well, if I say there's no rules, then you can just act wise in front of your kids, in front of your people, friends or whatever, and you don't have to know anything. That's the appeal. That's we've been talking about this all the way through. That's the shadow of the ladder. If you believe in me, that there are no rules, and you don't have to climb the ladder of logos, dialectic, dianoia, and truth. You can just create a fake shadow. I know everything anyway. Why? Because there are no rules, because I say so. So the most ignorant of people can act the most wise. And Socrates is saying that's what these people are. They spend their time contradicting the logos. There is no logos, and they believe they have become most wise, and they alone understand. And what do they understand? The thing that allows them to act most wise, that there is no rules, there is no reality, there is no logos. Therefore, I'm the wisest because I'm the one who's figured that out. That's why the fascists, that's their marketing. That's why they appeal to the most poorly educated, because everyone wants to be wise. Everyone wants to know. It's our purpose. It's our destiny. But if there's no education of this, or it happens to be that the fascists, defund education or try and they're the ones burning books, of course. Therefore, people don't have the education, but they still want to be wise. That's then, and they come along and say, oh, by the way, there is no understanding. You're just as wise as the cleverest person. We have that, you're better, you're higher up the hierarchy just because you know that they're wrong, because you can contradict the experts. That's appealing. That's the marketing. So if you realize, there's a pandemic recently, and the people who climb the ladder of understanding in medicine, of course, they're not perfect. There are social influences and political influences, and they're not learning the logos in their education and so forth. But generally speaking, they are the ones with the expertise, the experience, and the understanding. The people who claim to be smarter than them without any training seem to be the most poorly educated. Why? Because the anti-logos. They haven't done anything in medicine. They haven't created anything in medicine. They haven't made any discoveries. But they try and find ways to shoot down the logos of the experts. And they think that activity makes them wisest. Because that's what the fascists tell them. Because Fox News and those sorts of things, they don't actually provide any logos. All they do is shoot down any attempts to change. And they are the angriest. All of their shows are about shouting over each other or insulting people. It's very icky and mean. But they all pat themselves on the back and say, we are the smartest. That's appealing for those who lack education. Oh, I'm smarter than you because I realize that there is no understanding. So you, with all of your book learning, I'm better than you because I realize this. This is the con that plays out today that even Socrates was seeing back then. He could see it all. What kind of vision must he have? It's so obvious to him. This is just how it plays out. 2,000 years later, exactly the same. And of course, those people who want to oppress the many then defund education, take all the money out of the society, say, oh, that's socialism. To helping others is socialism. Give it all to the billionaires. Give it all to me. Therefore, the uneducated who want to actually reach enlightenment, because we all do, the only way that they're offered is anti-logos. Join our group where we attack everyone. We're going to kill the planet and we're going to make you poor. But in the brief moment before you realize that, you can act smart. Don't you want to be smart? Of course. All souls, that's what Socrates said. All physical things seek union with being, even sticks. So if someone offers them this union with being, and they're not educated enough to know that there is a logos, because these same people have defunded education, they can be conned and manipulated to support those who support this, the only theory that allows them to be up here, but actually it's the shadow, because they're not learning the logos. As true today as a thumbs up, well, thumbs down, actually. 2 thumbs down. It's sad that this happened. But in a larger scope, it's not sad. Because there is a greater justice if we can step back. If we realize there is an immortality of the soul, and there is actually a logos, we can reflect on this system and learn. Thumbs up for learning. We are seeing the implications of what follows if we don't have the logos. The anti-logos people will abuse, so they're anti-logos, so they don't have what they need to remove their problems, so their problems are in charge. Because as you climb the ladder, every step you have a problem and you have an excellence that you're developing. That's why you have to do both. Philosophy and midwifery. Just like anything that you learn, every level you'll hit a block. Is that going to be the last block, and do you give up, or do you find a way of overcoming that block? So if they can't reach excellence because they don't have what they have to remove their blocks, so the thing in charge is their block, so that's what makes them fascist. Because they lack the logos. And of course, if they're claiming to deserve to be billionaires or deserve to be in charge, they have to justify not having logos. Oh, there is no logos. Therefore, they think they're smart ones. They pass rules that allow them to stay in charge, to fund education, so people will be more easily convinced by this ploy, offer this anti-logos to them, and claim they are the smartest and wisest, as we see in the text. They are the smartest and wisest, and they alone have the understanding because they realize that there is no logos, because of how good they are in contradicting the logos. That's the text we're at. We've seen this. This is the hierarchy thing. So if there is an actual hierarchy that we actually want to learn, manipulation happens, vice happens, not from the absence of the ladder. That's just learning. That's why you go to school. Oh, I don't know about medicine, so I'm going to learn. The problem is people who act as though they know medicine when they don't. So this is the appeal of the shadow. That's the vices. You have some of the structure, but you apply the wrong things. You master some pleasures to be mastered by others. So what happens is, if you don't have the actual ladder, we talked about how do these right-wing grifters appeal to people. I say right-wing, but it's not a political thing. It's just that the majority of those people are in that sphere because right-wing means conservative. Doesn't mean progressive. It's the opposite. And conservative means holding on to the past, which means no learning. So they're not looking to go up, progress. And they happen to be the ones doing it most of the time. Of course, people who claim to be left-wing can do it as well. So it's not what team are you in. It's just understanding the truth, not personal. They offer, but yeah, the red pills, they're all, fascists and conservatives. They say, oh, you're better because you're white. You don't have to learn the logos because there is no logos. Look at, we're the smartest, and we just smart because we have big muscles, or because we yell at people, or because we got money. This is how they appeal to, 12 to 20-year-old men usually, but this is all people, right? If you're up the ladder because you're white, or because you're American, or because something that doesn't involve learning. So we've already talked about that. That's the appeal. Offering someone a hierarchical status without having to actually climb the ladder. Because there is no ladder. But there is a ladder. So why would we be seeking it? Why would the appeal be appealing? Why would we be able to be tricked in that way? And of course, we pointed to a quote. This has already been pointed out before. We just adding the logos to it to see why this is true. From President Lyndon B. Johnson. You can convince the lowest white man that he's better than the best. If you convince the lowest white man he's better than the best colored man, he won't notice you're picking his pocket. Hell, give him someone to look down on, and he'll empty his pockets for you. That's grifting. That's the essence of grifting. That's why these billionaires who act against the interests of humanity and the people they're supposed to be acting in care of, that's why they use racist rhetoric. Right, so even Socrates could see this back then. And of course in art, you see it too. Art is anything. Isn't there an art of medicine? Oh no, but like painting art. It's anything. But in other arts, like medicine, you should benefit your... Should painting have a benefit? Should music have a benefit? Should there be a benefit in religion, in spirituality? Religion means belief, so let's use the word spirituality. About ruling. There are rules to an art, and we will end up hating the logos and hating. So let's go back. Where were we? There is no greater defect one can suffer than to hate the logos. So this is an extreme. We talked about there being extremes being rare. This is a rare moment where Socrates is giving us the extreme. We can contrast this with what we saw in the Phaedo, because Parmenides, in the Parmenides, because Parmenides also gave us an extreme. The following is the greatest puzzle, even if following the proof through many elaborate details of the dialectic, from one practiced and experienced, and with natural talent in the dialectic. Even then, he who contends that the idea selves, realities, are still unknowable, may still remain unpersuaded. So the same pathologos, Parmenides is applying it to the knowability of the divine, of the idea selves. And of course, in our reading, we saw that the idea selves have a hyparxis. That's the knowable experience. That's truth and reality. That's mind itself. So Parmenides pointed out, hey, the greatest problem is even if you go through this dialectic, you might still be unpersuaded that there is a knowable higher dimension. Socrates, at the end of his life, because that's what Socrates heard at the start of his life, Socrates is saying the greatest defect is not to do with its knowability, but its understandability. Of course, logos, if there is an understandability, that also has to exist in being. So you could say, well, he's talking about both, because the logos is our understandability. You can understand this world. It's an understandable, intelligent universe, but you can know it. So maybe Logos incorporates both, technically. But it is interesting that he heard from Parmenides, the greatest problem is even if you find someone who is a skilled dialectician and therefore skilled in practice, techne and experience, art. So that first quote, that quote we just read, to do with an art, even if you do come across someone with the art and skilled in that art, you may still of the dialectic through the many elaborate details as Socrates is going through now. You still may be unpersuaded that realities are knowable. Socrates is taking it one step further and saying, not only that, I think the greatest problem is hating the Logos. Not just the knowability of reality, the understandability of reality. The path itself. The way in which the knowing unfolds. So we have an interesting duad of balloons, experience and understanding, definition and demonstration, with Socrates and Parmenides. Interesting bookends of the life of Socrates that we can see. The start with the Parmenides and at the end of his life in the Phaedo. So the greatest defect is that one can suffer is to hate the Logos. But hating any Logos, he says. But hatred of Logos and hatred of humans arise out of the same condition. Hatred of humans is either put on out of excessive trust in someone without the art, and by being led to believe that the man is altogether truthful and sound and trustworthy, then a short time afterwards discovers this person is base and untrustworthy. Villain music. And then after this experience, another one also happens. And when one has this feeling many times, beaten down over and over again with this sort of thing, especially with those who he's led to believe are their nearest and dearest friends, in the end, after many such blows, he hates everyone and is led to believe that perfect wholesomeness, soundness, or sanity, and we saw this, where was our note? Can't see our note, it's gone. But it's there. Can't see it for some reason. So healthy mind. So the ideal or parapon above, greater than the above. So perfect is all right. Perfect healthiness of mind does not exist in anyone. Have you seen this, Phaedo? I've seen it many times indeed, Socrates. This is the when we find the origin of the villain in pretty much in most movies, it's to this. Many blows of being let down by people who they thought were their nearest and dearest friends without being able to judge whether or not they were actually truthful and sound and trustworthy, which also helps us understand our ignorance. Before we learnt the art, we would trust those we're familiar with, trust our family, trust our community, trust the religion we grew up in. Because we don't have the Logos. Evolutionarily speaking, that's the origin of that. In cave, good, safe. Because inside this cave is good and safe and number one. Because we don't have the art to judge. Hey, maybe there's a great person in the cave next door. Maybe he's even wiser than your dad. Perish the thought. Of course, that's rationally must be the case. It doesn't feel that way because of our human evolution. And because we didn't have the art back then, just as we didn't have the art when we were young. So when we talk about evolution, we can also talk about the growth within. So we're talking about the collective and the individual all the way through. It applies to both. Society and our own spiritual quest. Evolution and our own spiritual evolution. When we were young, we didn't have the art. Therefore, if this is why we hate people and the greatest defect to hate the logos, we need to be better learn this art ourselves. Fortunately, we have time. We're on this planet. We can do it. So after many blows, he hates everyone, having not and led to believe there is no perfect healthiness of mind. Have you seen this, Phaedo? Many times indeed. Is it not the case that this disgraceful mental condition is clearly due to an attempt to have human relations without making use of such an art in human affairs? So our question is, what is that art? For if he had made use of an art to any degree, it would have led him to believe, just as it has to be in this way, that on the one hand, the very useful and the very worthless are rare, and on the other hand, the majority are between extremes. What do you mean? Short and tall? It's rare to find an extremely tall person or short person. Swift and slow, deformed or well-formed, white or black. They are abundant and plentiful are in between the extremes. Do you think this is the case if we, in a contest of worthlessness, the winners would be very few? Only very few people are worthless. Everyone's somewhere in between. But we are not like human beings. But that sick condition is when we put trust in the logos as being true, not human beings, the logos as being true, without the use of the art of the logos. So we had a question, what is that art we need to employ? Art of the logos. So we can start a dialectic on art. Art. So we can start by taking notes on art. Well, it requires to judge. And we judge truth, trust, worthiness, and soundness. Of course, we have to have, so let's make some room. We have to be doing A and B. We have A if it is, and B if it ain't. If we don't have the use of the art, we will have bad feelings that we can say is let down or betrayed. These are blows, and they will end up hating human beings, hating humans, and we'll also end up believing excellence or the ideal, perfect, healthy mind. Does not exist. So this does tie back to what we were saying about Parmenides, because the perfect or ideal healthy mind would be the paradigm. There is no paradigm of excellence. To be a philosopher is to seek excellence. To be a philosopher is to seek the paradigm. So I encourage you to take your own notes as we read. Human relations without, okay. So we have to realize that the majority are in the middle. Majority between the extremes. If we had a contest of worthlessness, the winners would be few. But if you have excessive trust in the logos, without the use of the art of the logos, shortly believes self to be false, but whereas at other times not being so. So sometimes you believe that what they're saying is false, but then sometimes not. And then with another case, and then more so with those who spend their time contradicting the logos. In the end, so you become the villain. You become that you are most wise because you alone have thoroughly understood that there is no soundness or stability among the realities, nor the logos, but that which exists that which does exist, all that exists without any rules of the art, as it were. Like the European states churning up and down with no resting for any time. Always in motion, very physical, right? Up and down like the tides. Like the waves. Of course, that would make sense because there is a kind of back and forth movement of opposites in the physical world that is not stable because the stability exists in the reality. So if you discount the realities and the logos, then the logos you are left with is the back and forth nothing movement. And there's no rest, there's no truth, there's no final goal, no destiny. So these would all follow in here. Contradicting the logos. So logos. False. At times. Other times. Not so. Interesting, he says other times not false. He doesn't say other times true, because this whole way of thinking discounts the idea of truth. Which is interesting. It's interesting bind, because the people who are like this, who claim there is no reality in logos, say, oh yeah, my opinions are right. My opinions are that there is no right or wrong. Or my opinions are there is no paradigm. There is no truth. Then you say, what about what you just said? What about your opinions? Oh no, but my opinions are the exception. It's not that they're true, because my whole shtick is there is no truth. It's that they're not. It's that they are not false. Which is an interesting distinction we can see here. Other times not so. And that would lead to believe fake wisdom, believe wise, and of course this would go under the category of vice, and understood thoroughly. understood that no soundness or stability in realities or logos. Realities, logos, and rules of art. And we can say model actually, yeah, from there we could say, oh, hang on a second. So these are what it's not. This can help us inform what it is. So if we take soundness and stability of reality, logos, and rules, so we can make another note over here from that. Soundness and stability of realities, logos, and rules of art. We're learning more about what art is. Art requires there to be a soundness and stability of the realities that you're relating to in art, of the logos you are using to comprehend and use them, and the rules. So we could say all of these together paradigm. Is a paradigm, does it require a sound model, reality? Does it require an understandability of how it unfolds and how it can be related to? Are there rules or a structure? Therefore, we're learning more about what an art is. So what is art? Well, it's something that allows you to judge truth, soundness, and trustworthiness. There is some understanding that the majority are between extremes. So that would be relating to a development or a continuum. So if people are between those extremes, then we can say that there is a progression or development. Question mark. If there are two extremes, you could be moving from the worthlessness to the ideal. A paradigm, so we're learning more about what art actually is. So we don't just want to contradict the contradictors. What makes them wise who are in side B if there ain't an art? These sort of people. Let's make some more actually. They think there's no stability. Right, I think there was. This is ignorance. So we're learning more about ignorance too. So ignorance is not just not knowing, it's believing you know that which you don't. That's what is tied to pathologos, the worst condition. And of course, those people think they're wise. Can't tell them anything. In fact, Parmenides referred to this earlier, well, in the start of Socrates' journey. We have a quote. One who hears these words is puzzled and questioned whether cells do exist, or if they do exist, that they exist in the highest degree, so that it appears abundantly necessary that cells must be unknown by human nature. Again, Parmenides talking about this big problem of not being convinced that there is a knowable reality. And whoever speaks in this way may appear to be saying something important and may be thought of as being an extraordinary statement by themselves remaining unable to be persuaded. You can't tell them nothing. They're not going to change their mind. They believe they have thoroughly understood. They believe they are wise. That's ignorance. This is what follows people if in the dialectic of if there isn't an art. If there isn't an art, you have the conditions for people to have the greatest problem, according to Parmenides, to be convinced that there is no reality, no knowable reality. Not just that, to pass on, to be not just for themselves, but to pass on to others. That's what Parmenides is saying. Hey, the reason why we have the problem is because we were convinced by these people who felt like they couldn't change their mind. They felt like they already were wise and thoroughly understood, so they couldn't be persuaded. So they appeared to be wise. They appeared to be saying something important. So it's a lineage of problem, of ignorance. Just like born into one crazy cult, usually it's your family. Usually religions are inherited through the family. It's not a coincidence. And I don't mean yours. I mean the hundreds and hundreds of others that are not yours. You can see that at least they are harmful, incorrect, false. And a child not using the art of the logos can be duped. That's a bit of a joke, because religion means to be bound by a belief, which means you're not using the logos. So by principle, it's against our interests, because we seek that which is beyond opinion. So Parmenides points out this is the cause. These people are the cause in that greatest problem of not thinking there is a knowable realm of being. And of course, this would follow for Socrates. Socrates is saying the biggest problem he is saying is the logos. So not the knowability, it's the understandability. They convince you there's no logos, there's no reality, so it's both, I guess. It's the realities don't exist, logos doesn't exist, and there's no rules. There's no actual paradigm or rules or system of understanding, techne, skill. And of course, so we can say rules and skill. So art requires there to be a reality, a model, a logos or understandability and use of, and key terms, language, understandability of that model requires a skill to use it, and the rules through which the skill is employed. That's the dialectic. So here we have being, logos, and dialectic. And of course, these are the three terms that we said: the logos, the self-logos, the dialectic directed towards being. That was our definition of dianoia a few episodes ago. So something about the paradigm, something about art is closely related to how we're understanding dianoia. Let's keep reading. What you say is entirely true. Good. Is it not the case then, Phaedo, that it would be a sad state of affairs if there were really a certain logos that is true and firm? There's our absolute reality and capable of being understood. Here is our understandability of reality. These are the two big ones, Parmenides and Socrates. So he's kind of adding to Parmenides and while incorporating it. But that through their experience of having dealt with such logos, at one time they were believed it to be true, but another time untrue. But they did not in any way blame themselves or their own lack of art. So true and untrue. But in the end, because of the suffering, gladly shift the blame away from themselves to the logos. And from that time spend the rest of their life hating and reviling the logos, thus being deprived of the truth of beings and knowledge. There's a lot there. Wow.
Wow. Wow. Wow. Wow. Wow. Wow.
So, what's he telling us? He's giving us something about what it is and what it isn't. There is a truth of beings, number one. There's a truth of knowledge. There is a truth of beings and of knowledge. Interesting. So that confirms what we were learning earlier, that the object of knowledge is the beings, or the hyparxis of the beings. That the logos is true and firm and capable of being understood. So there's our the theory that we've been playing with, that logos is tied to understanding, knowledge is tied to beings. We're getting confirmation of where we are. This can go onto another dialectic of being, knowability. So within the art, we have logos is true and firm. So yeah, this can go into your logos dialectic. Do we have a logos dialectic somewhere? What is art? Surely we have a dialectic on the logos somewhere on the board. Dialectic on being. Alright. Got a lot of notes happening. Let's start a new one on the logos. So logos. These are some notes that you can find in your dialectic on logos document. It's true and firm. True and firm. It's capable of being understood. And likewise, we can have a being dialectic. Being is there's a truth of being and of knowledge. True. Of beings are related to knowledge. Connected to knowledge. So these are some more notes to go into a dialectic on being, a dialectic on logos. I think we probably have a few going on the board. So, and so these are the stakes for you personally. You spend the rest of the life, put this in green, you spend your rest of your life hating and reviling logos. and thus being deprived of truth of beings and of knowledge. So, yeah, this happens. It's part of being a human being. You will be tricked. You will be lied to. There'll be scammers in your life. You grow up. By the way, this explains atheism. People who you were told are near and dear to you and you should trust, you trust them, and they tell you the stuff about whatever religion you happen to be brought up into. Then you realize sometimes what they're saying makes sense, sometimes it's nonsense. And then you keep suffering that over and over with these negative feelings, blow after blow. And then you end up hating people or hating the logos itself. There is no God. So most atheists are responding to the irrationality and the harmfulness and the falseness of their religion. Or religion in general. Because in principle it's belief. Believing some other dude who has their own ignorance. Not reading the text, realizing that there's a lot of ignorance in various translators. We've seen this ourselves. It's part of being human. Everyone is not at the extremes. Somewhere in the middle of where they're at and where they're stuck. If you don't realize that, and you only realize that as part of the art, that, hey, I don't know, the Gospel of Mark. Mark wasn't perfect. He had some problems. He had some understanding and vision, and he had some problems. Everyone does. Paul. Most of modern Christianity is based on the works of Paul. He has terrible, terrible problems. Huge. But that's kind of, oh no, we just believe everything he says. And he says, oh, it's me. Everyone should believe me. And understanding is bad, and belief in authority is good. Faith. Not just belief, irrational belief. By nature, that's faith. You can't prove this. You can't understand this. So we need to have an art to be able to judge where the translator, where the author is at, and where they're stuck. Part of being human, and our same with our friends. So, what happens? Well, you realize, hang on a second, after blow of these lies, I might not blame my own lack of an art of being able to discern truth from fiction. Hey, it's not about believing everything they say. Of course it's going to be, most of it's going to be garbage. Of course. You met a human being? Of course there's going to be lies and manipulation. Have you seen human history? It's cycles and cycles of ignorance and bloodshed and genocide, following the whims of tyrants who claim to be speaking from God. All kings and queens are closer to the divine. Apparently, that's what gives them the divine right to rule. Bullcrap. Of course we know that's nonsense. And of course, people kept in ignorance would find it hard to reason about that. Yeah, no joke. Everyone has problems. They wouldn't be here if they weren't. Therefore, we have to have an art of being able to discern what is true and what isn't. Can't just trust everything. So this whole, it's wrong to judge, or don't be judgmental. Bullshit. You need to judge. That's part of being an art. If you say that to a doctor, don't judge healthiness or sickness. Same thing. Don't judge truth or falseness in logos. Thankfully, we're learning the dialectic, the way of reasoning together cooperatively, following the paradigm, following the understandability, to ourselves come to the conclusions. We're practicing the art. And he's saying, hey, by the way, if you blame reason itself, if you blame logos itself, or not just reason, or blame the divine reality itself, because logos applies to both, the understandability, as we saw, the truth and the firmness and the understandability of the logos and the knowability of being. If you think, oh, well, because of all these liars and bullshit artists that tricked me, therefore there is no understanding, or there is no realm of being, there is no divine, higher aspect of reality, mind, consciousness, that which is immortal and eternal, then what will happen? You'll spend your life hating and reviling the logos, which applies to both, and thus depriving yourself of the truth of beings, depriving yourself of knowledge, the very thing he said all things seek. even sticks, seek the truth of beings and knowledge. We all do. It's what motivates us. That's why cons can be cons. They play into this. They pass the anti-logos as knowledge. Oh, that's what makes you smarter than the experts. You were smart enough not to learn. It's true, like white supremacists or racists. Oh, well, I'm not racist, it's just the truth. What will they say? I'm not a racist, I'm a realist. They believe in their own opinions. They believe it's the truth. We all seek the truth of beings and knowledge, but if we don't realize that we were manipulated. We were. We suffered injustices growing up. We all did. Some of them greater than others. Some of them devastating the effects may last our entire lifetime. It may take us many lifetimes to reflect on and understand the implications of. There are injustices of this kind. We believe people we shouldn't. Often people who were supposed to be near and dear to us, as Socrates is outlining. Isn't it amazing he can see this all, Socrates? But that's the human condition. Everyone wants to play the knower, and their teachers also themselves were wearing the mask of the knower. And they got there by contradicting the logos. Hey, when you learned to path the logos, you were told to shut up. You were told to get out. No questions were allowed. If you could ask questions, oh, excuse me, Dad, you spent your whole life as a Mormon. I saw this South Park episode which made me think that your whole life has been nonsense. That could be dangerous to ask as a 4-year-old. When a father having his whole beliefs challenged can punch or kill his child and then ask for forgiveness and then doesn't matter. Yeah, that was an injustice. And there were no logos. They were contradicting the logos. Keep silent, no talking. But it wasn't because reason itself is bad. They had the shadow of it. They had the distortion of it. They had the corruption of it. It wasn't because knowledge itself doesn't exist. They were just pretending. They were cosplaying. All parents cosplay as knowers. That's part of the appeal of being a parent. Because no one gives a crap about your dumb opinions. Except kids who have to. Or if you're a boss, you can be a mini fascist. They call bosses mini fascists now. Petty tyrants, they call them. People who have power over others and can act like their dumb opinions are wisdom when they're not. Because manipulation, the societal conditions that make you have to reliant on these people for money, for rent or something. It's not because knowledge doesn't exist, it's because its shadow isn't real. Therefore, as we've been learning, we have to recognize what it is and what it isn't. The logos and the shadow of the logos, the pathologos, the dialectic and the distortion of the dialectic. You need both. And Socrates is saying both is part of having an art. These are the extremes. Everyone's going to be somewhere within that arc of the shadow and the ladder. We have to learn how to discern. We have to have a paradigm of truth. We have to realize it's understandable, that's the logos. And we have to realize there's a skill of using it and rules, the dialectic structure. If you apply it, you can prevent these bad things from happening. And the worst thing is you spend your life hating and reviling the logos and not realizing it wasn't not your fault, by the way. When he's saying blame, I might even look this up. See, Plato might have a problem with blame. That's a conversation for another day. But blame is of course part of a lot of religions, including Christianity. Blame and sin, forgiveness, all that crap. We're not interested in blame. It's not a blame game. It's an understanding game. There are conditions and causes, and it's important that because the blame game means you try and defend that you were right all along so you don't get punished. Violence, fascism, tyranny. But that means if you spend your whole life defending your ignorance, you're literally in the problem. So we want to create the conditions so we don't have to defend whatever we did before. Be open to learning, which means no blame game. That's bollocks. No blame game. The word here is idioto. And of course, blame is a good way of tyrants to act out their tyranny. Oh, you're wrong. Oh, now I get to inflict my special kind of ignorance on you through violence. And pretend, cosplay as the wise man. Give credit for, lay charge, allege as the cause. See, that's better, isn't it? Let's pull up the text. Which one? Whoops. There we go. So we see in the good. What's wrong with my mouse? I can't highlight for some reason. In the good sense, allege, give one the credit. Also lay as one's charge or allege as the cause. Oh, it's loading. No, it's because something's wrong. Okay, forget about that. So we're going to take the word blame, and we're going to highlight this. We're going to strike this one because, again, we don't just believe everything our translator writes. Everyone is between those angles. This is the art. We've been using that all along. We've been judging the Balboa as closer to the ideal than the lobe or the Rouse. Maybe Rouse here and then lobe here. We've been learning about Rouse's particular problems. Very Christian, talks about evil and conversion a lot. So we're seeing the nature of his distortion. That's part of the art. You wouldn't trust everything he says about evil. Same thing with the Rouse. Same thing with the Balboa. Blame. Is blame a part of our translator's tradition? Because everyone is. Everyone is. We've also recognized that the word conversion was part of Balboa. So we have conversion, we have blame. Maybe there's a Christian or an Abrahamic influence to our translator. Maybe. It's important for us to judge because that's the art. If we find out, well, because, and we're seeing here why. Sometimes what he's saying is true, our translator. Sometimes untrue, maybe blame, maybe conversion, maybe evil, if that's the word used. So what do we do? Give up, throw the text in the bin, hate the logos, hate the translator? Well, that won't be good because we will deprive ourselves from reaching the truth of beings and knowledge. Boo. No. Boo.
Flibbity-gibbity nonsense.
We don't want to do that. Instead, we have to practice the art. What do we see in the art is? Realizing where you're at, where you're stuck. The majority is somewhere between them. Understanding the ideal of that. Bring up our notes. Recognizing that there is a true and firm logos that is capable of being understood, that there is a knowledge of being, and that's the truth. There's a skill and there are rules allowing us to judge. And of course, if we don't, we suffer the implications of side B. This is why our dialectic has A and B. Because A is this and B is this. So even the dialectic has both. Isn't that cool? It's everything. The dialectic is everywhere and everything. And it has to be if it's the paradigm. Philosophy is so great because it makes things so simple. So awesome. Taking that back with us, we want to not just define the art of the logos and the dialectic, we want to demonstrate it. Walk the walk and talk the talk and walk the walk, as Socrates said. Walk and talk. So, get rid of blame. Address the causes. So, they did not in any way assign to the cause their own, let's like that. Let's credit or cause. Add note. Credit or cause. Their own lack of art, but in the end, because of the suffering, if you did suffer the injustice. We all did. In fact, that's the creation of, just like in the ladder up, we're reaching being, the truth of being. That's the paradigm. That's the initiation. There's a similar initiation in our upbringing where someone appeared to be being, appeared to be beautiful, had the mask, or were cosplaying beauty and wisdom and all those sorts of things. Again, there has to be an ideal for the cons to work. There has to be a hierarchy for the billionaires to prey on racism. You're higher up the hierarchy, or we have to seek a hierarchy. There has to be a seeking of knowledge for them to say, oh, you can play the knower if you're anti-logos. You can just discount all of the knowers and then that will make you smart. We have to seek knowledge for that con to work. Likewise, there has to be this initiation experience for there to be similarly in our development of the pathologos. Something about them seemed believable without the use of the art. So the art would have prevented us from being duped. But of course, like human evolution, same thing. Like as a baby, we didn't have the art. We yet to learn it. But we shift the blame away from ourselves. Again, not blame. Cause. Strike that. Away from ourselves to the logos. Just because you suffered an injustice doesn't mean there is no truth and there is no logos. That's big. Don't stop at atheism. Yes, often people who realize the irrationality of their religion and they've been lied to become atheists, but don't make it your identity. Realize there is an art. They just didn't have it. But the reason that they were conning you was that you were seeking it. The reason why they wanted to cosplay it was it must exist in some way that they just couldn't reach. It's not that there is no divine and understandability, it's that they were bullshitting. And they were taking advantage of us when we lacked the art. That's an injustice. Of course, we wouldn't just blame them, we would want to understand the causes and the conditions for that injustice. Because in one sense, we're all philosophers. Yeah, it's good that you want to be wise. But hey, did you grow up with the logos? Or is every time you turn on the TV, is it an anti-logos? Some billionaire-sponsored mouthpiece telling you there is no understanding, there can't be any change, there is no ideal, there is no art of governing, there is no art of religion, of spirituality. If that's your whole upbringing, then of course, that's what you're going to parrot back, that's what you're going to believe. Is the image of knowing. So it's not a blame game, even if we did suffer the injustices of that tradition. But we can apply the art to address it in a new kind of way, in a just way. What would be the just way of approaching the past injustices here? Well, not blaming, not saying that there's no truth in being, not saying that there's no understandability of the logos. What's he saying? How would you address this injustice that we suffer? All human beings suffer in order to gain a problem. Which is why we're here. Art. Lack of an art. Therefore, our job must be, according to what follows rationally through the logos, and what must follow towards reaching knowledge of being, there must be an art, and we must be here to learn it. Applying it in all cases, including to our past injustices. Can we approach the past injustice, the people who conned us that we thought are our nearest and dearest friends, can we approach them with the art? What would it be like? And is Socrates not just defining the art for us, giving us what we need to define it, but is Socrates himself demonstrating this art? Is he blaming these Simius and Cebes for throwing everybody else in the room into disarray? Or is he using an art to address them fairly, without blame, but with understanding, logos, and being? Notice, blame doesn't approach understanding. It's you're wrong, feel bad, and then repent by doing what I say. It's a manipulation game. No understanding. Forgiveness, blame, all that crap, no understanding. No causes. Also, if you feel bad about yourself, how can you be the same as being? If you experience the pureness of being through likeness, the pure reaching the pure, then you have to recognize the nobility and divinity of your essence, of your soul, of your ousia. Blame does the opposite. It destroys that. Blame is an evil game. Of course, it's not evil. There's no evil existing. It's the opposite of goodness. It's the bad game. It's the worst thing you could do. It's harmful. As evil could be without there actually being a divine, sinister presence. It's the shadow. So we have to remove blame and punishment and violence, of course, because we don't want to be deprived of the truth of being of knowledge, and instead replace it with that which leads us to being, that which has an art, which recognizes there is a paradigm, has an understandable logos, has a skill and rules of following the dialectical structure. So what do? We have to learn the art. Applying it to our problems, our injustices, and our highest goal. Not blame. Not hating the logos. Not reviling the logos. Not saying that there's nothing understandable. That there is nothing sound and stable about the realities, the logos, or the paradigm, the skill and the rules. And if there's a virtue, then it would be holding it, desiring it, holding it, using it, and functioning through it at all times. So, if today we were seeing the stakes of what would make the ideal, or the, where's the word here? Parapun, the perfect. If there is a parapun story, a parapun narrative, a parapun hero's story, hero's journey, well, not journey, hero's tale, what would it be? And is it this one? He's outlined the stakes. And he's built the stakes up. Not only that, you will have the greatest problem is you will revile and hate the logos. You will think that there is no understanding, there is no truth and firmness in the logos that is understandable, and you won't reach truth, being, and knowledge. Not only that, you'll become a mouthpiece and part of the tradition of injustice to yourself and to others. So ultimate stakes. Literally playing out right now at every level. How much blame is in every institution? How much claiming there is no art and skill and paradigm, there is no truth for rulers, for authorities of religions and so forth? How much con is there by appealing to the shadow, or appealing to that high part of our soul but offering the shadow? Hey, you want to climb up the hierarchy? Just be racist like me. That puts you up the hierarchy. Yay. Oh, just use violence to blame and punish, because that's what it means to be a Noah. Cons within our soul and within our species. Socrates is laying, he could see this. Isn't it amazing? As true today and then as it was then, and he can see it. So part of this art would be to be able to see it as obvious. What a remarkable man he must be. So raising the stakes in this parapun or ideal hero story to the ultimate, all the way to truth and being and understandability. Pointing out it's the scope or the cause of the problem. By the way, that's division, outlining all of the implications, all of the problems to ourselves and to reality and to humanity, and finding that which unifies or has the highest scope, the logos and the truth of being, pulling that out and applying it back to our definition, defining the ideal hero story. Because all of those things follow. The doubt, the fear, the hatred of humans, the hatred of the logos, the teaching others that there is no logos, the thinking that makes you wise, the setting up of institutions to support that, the inability to solve human problems and therefore causing the terrible cycles of injustice and exploitation and war and bloodshed. All of these things are the divisions that follow. Of those divisions, he pulled out the most important one: deprived of the truth of being and knowledge, and the understandability and the truth of the logos. So we can take that back to greater understand what we were defining: the ideal hero story. So what is the ideal hero story? He has to save the truth and understandability of the logos and the truth and being of knowledge. The truth of being and knowledge. That's what he has to say. That's what the ideal hero would save. And the way he does that, so what will be, therefore, so all of those things together, the art of the logos. To be able to do that is the art of the logos. Therefore, following the dialectic, the next dialectic would be, what is the art of the logos? If we were to write that down, we started with definition, self to self, the ideal hero story. How does it demonstrate itself? It has to save the cause of all particulars that need saving, either either purification from problem or perfection in development. In other words, is there a problem? Is there a poison lake that has to be fixed? Or is there still a school, but the school needs to be better to become the best school? Or does your class need to perfect itself in its training? Does Goku need to become better? Does this class in My Hero Academia have to beat the other class? So either purification of a problem or perfection and development. We recognize that as the ladder to our destiny, or that's better, or the shadow of that ladder to fate. And of course, we saw that having the art is to recognize that everything is somewhere in between, with some level of angle within that right angle here. That's pretty cool. That would be the ideal hero's journey, but then we have to say more about it, because, I mean, you can stop there. That's the thing about the dialectic. You can do 1 and 2, and that's enough. And Socrates said that, hey, by the way, Cebes, The soul is immortal. The soul has to exist before birth, right? What? Definition. That's what he's defining. He was like, oh, well, hang on, why? Oh, because demonstration. Oh, because all learning is remembering. CB says, oh yeah, no, yeah, I'm familiar with that. Okay, yep, that's enough. We can move on to the next step on that ladder, up that ladder, up on that path upward. Simius said, hang on a second, I'm not really familiar. Can you divide that up into its arguments? Others to others. So, demonstrator, what's an other that you can use to talk about the soul being immortal? Learning. Oh, I'm not familiar with that. Can you take this learning here? So we've gone here to here. Notice it rolls on from one to the next. So we've defined the soul as immortal. How? Because that soul, immortality of the soul that you've just defined here becomes the next term, functions through the logos of learning. Therefore, Simius said, I'm not familiar with that logos of learning. Can you take that which was here and divide it into others, divide it up into its parts, to its arguments, so I can follow. So here we've got division, all of the things that follow, that we've seen here, that follow. You hate the logos, hate revile, logos, claim, no, soundness and stability, in realities, logos, or rules. Logos, or rules, or skill, techne. Sick condition. So these are divisions. Most, sick, condition, I'm a mouthpiece, for anti-logos, and there were many more that we saw. Fill in your own. I encourage you to do this yourself. Then of those, we can say that the greatest significance of that, so of all of these, can you synthesize one term that unifies them as the most significant, that we can then analyze or analyze and bring back to the start? So that's, of those, what can you pull out to take back to the start? That takes it all the way back around to the S. Well, there's two options here. Well, he did say, if it isn't, you think that there's no logos that is true, firm, and understandable. Hate the logos and revile the logos, therefore deprived of truth of beings and knowledge. So we could say deprived of beings and knowledge. All of those things, this is the greatest problem. Because yeah, it might take a while for the world to catch on, but you can do that. You can get knowledge of the beings. You can reach your purpose. You can do your purpose here. You can do what your soul needs to do as part of your evolutionary development. But hang on a second. This is the synthesis of what it isn't. These are the stakes. If there wasn't a hero's journey, if the hero wasn't able to reach his goal. So that's, if it isn't, That's story B, if the hero didn't succeed. So this is if it isn't, if hero fails, or B, which is if it isn't. So, but we want the synthesis of if it is. That is, if there is a ideal hero story, he would have to demonstrate itself as, that's what we're defining the hero story, demonstrate it as saving the cause of all particulars that need saving for purification or from problems or perfection and development. So this would have to be what he faces. That's how the greatest or the ideal would not just save one particular lake, but how could we save all lakes? Not just now, but forever. Whenever there's a possibility of poisoning lake, how could the hero save that? That's what he has to be able to do. Demonstrate it. Division. Well, we had a lot of divisions. A lot of these are to do if he fails. So these are the stakes if he wasn't able to do that. Ultimately, we would be deprived, so the highest stake would be deprived of beings and knowledge if the heroes fail. That's if it isn't. But if it is, what is the thing that the hero would have to demonstrate to address all of those divisions? He would have to have the art of the So that's synthesizing all of it to what the hero has to do. And of course, there's the analysis part, which means we have to take this back to the start. Therefore, have we better understood what the ideal hero story is? We are doing it. We're walking and talking the dialectic. We are doing it ourselves. We are Hercules, because Socrates is our aid. He's Ilias or Ionius or whatever that guy is, Hercules' buddy, assistant, because he's giving us the material that we then apply ourselves to in this way to unify it, to synthesize it, so that we can analyze the subject in a better way. Now, the next time we think about what would the ideal hero's journey be, well, we've just done this dialectic. We take this idea of art of the logos all the way back to the start, so that we better understand what was there to begin with. The ideal hero's story, therefore, is the story of the art of the logos. The hero has to show or share with the world what is needed for us to develop the art of the logos. And we only saw that because we demonstrated it. We did a dialectic on it. He gave us the information. We had to put on our Sherlock Holmes hats. This is philosophy. And therefore, we have a bunch of structure, don't we? The rules or the skills. Oh, is that part of the art? We're learning something that would be true forever. Doesn't matter how many rec centers are being shut down by the evil banker. It will always be. It will have a firmness and soundness. Doesn't matter if you're an alien species. If there's a problem, this would be the ideal hero story, would be developing the art of the logos no matter when you are or where you are. So not only does it have rules, it has a reality. We can ourselves, by doing this, understand it. That's the understandability of the logos we just mentioned. And if we do it well and apply it, there's our techneo skill. So we are ourselves, therefore, this is what it isn't, but of course, isn't. The opposite would also be what it is. So we could take those, the opposites of what it isn't, and what it is. Therefore, the art would have a reality, would have a logos, would have rules, would have skill, would be the opposite of the most sick condition. So it has reality, logos, skill, rules, skill. It is the best condition. Become a mouthpiece for logos, which is justice. Be a force of justice in the world. So all I'm doing is taking these. That's one of the way he writes, where he gives us the negatives. He wants us to take the opposite, to do the opposite. And we can recognize why, because the dialectic has both what it is and what it isn't. Therefore, if in doing this, we saw the rules, we understood it for ourselves, we recognize this will always be true, have a reality, and if we apply it in our lives skillfully, we are ourselves doing the ideal hero story. We are in the hero story.
Wow.
And therefore, what are we doing? Oh, because we just did this dialectic, we can understand the ideal hero story in a new way. Why? Because we take what happened at the end, we bring it back around to the start, and then we end up with a higher level. Now we understand we're not just doing the ideal hero story. We mentioned that earlier, walking the dialectic. We are learning the art of the logos. Because this is the last part that comes back to the start to help us see more clearly what's there. This whole talk today, we've been talking about how, isn't it amazing Socrates can just see it, as though it's just obviously there. True now as it was then. What kind of a man would it have to be to see it so obviously? He must have done a dialectic or two in his time. Because we're seeing, obvious to us that the ideal hero story is nothing other than the story of learning the art of the logos and sharing the art of the logos. Obvious. It's always, and by the way, if it's a reality, it's always going to be the case. 2,000 years ago or today, in an alien planet, 1,000,000 years in the future, or right now on Earth. It's obvious. How can it be obvious that you could see it? Because it's a reality. And it has a soundness and stability. It's not a coming and going like the tides in that river he mentioned. It's always true. That's part of it being an art. It's universally true forever. So of course we can see it wherever we go. And we can talk about it because we have an understanding of it, logos. We can see the structure of it and do a dialectic because we see the rules of it. We can do it skillfully. Therefore, whoops. So, what have we seen? We've done a dialectic. We have seen today that the ideal hero story is... Whoops. Damn it. I had a new sound effect I was going to play then. I put it on the wrong button. The ideal... Let me try that again. The ideal hero's journey is... Here we go. The art of the logos. That's the ideal hero's action hero story. The last action hero. Cool. Also, it's a promise. If our thesis is correct, that Socrates is spending his last day doing this, creating the old, he said at the beginning, I'm going to explain it and mythologize it. If he's creating with his last breaths, the ideal archetype of the ideal hero story, that is, we're seeing to do with using and sharing, skillfully using and becoming a mouthpiece for, or sharing, the art of the logos, and that's a promise. So, next time when we go back to a reading, will we see Socrates unfold the art of the logos? And does this art of the logos sufficiently address the causes of all problems, and in particular, the logos of Simmias and Cebes? that our soul is not immortal, something more like a coat that outlives us, or more like harmony. That's the first thing to go. Our consciousness is a byproduct of our body, or even if there is a soul, it scatters to the wind when we die. In other words, the big fear, the fear of death. Can he slay that? Using the art of the Logos, can that be the villain that he defeats? And can he do it in such a way that it will not only apply to that particular problem, but all false beliefs we have? That is the cause of all of those negative things, all of the injustices in our lives, or in human history, or in spirituality. All of those injustices, can it apply to all of them? Not just the big one, the fear of death. Of course, that's also, if there is no immortality of the soul, it might follow that there's no reality, it's not understandable, and therefore all these other things follow too. So the fear of death, or the not understanding that there is an immortality of the soul, might be causal of these things, or it might just be a big one. That could be another question we have. Do all of these problems come down to some sort of misunderstanding about the nature of being and death and soul? That it's not reality, it's not understandable, there aren't rules and skills, and then anything is anything, and therefore the sicknesses follow? Or, when he addresses this particular thing, can we ourselves recognize that, we can apply it to any false belief about the soul, about being, about the afterlife, about the meaning of life, about the Logos reality rules and skills? Can we see that this art of the Logos can be used to save everyone and everything? That's the promise. That's the stakes. That's where we are in the text.
Come on, man.
So on that bombshell and on that cliffhanger, I hope to see you next time. Feel free to join live on Twitch, subscribe on YouTube, join the Discord if you want to share your thoughts, insights, your own dialectics and work, or if you want to support the channel, keep an eye out for Patreon whenever it comes up. And I hope to see you next time. Thank you for joining me.